Welcome to the channel, guys. Andrew for life. You know we always appreciate a nice, beautiful, sexy like and subscribe. Okay, you know, it helps the channel out a ton. Now let's get right into today's topic. We're doing a tier list. A Berserk tier list. A tier list based on the most interesting characters. Okay? So, when I was looking at the tier lists that exist on tiermaker.com for Berserk, they pretty much had these characters on almost every tier list, like more or less. So it's like these core characters. Some tier lists had more, some had a little bit less. But generally, these are the characters that were on there. And so we're just going to work with what we already got. And so, once again, this is in terms of interestingness. So, if the characters are super interesting, they're S. If they're boring, if they're typical, if they're cliche, highly, they're going F. Okay? So, and for all intents and purposes, this guy right here, I really couldn't find who this even was. And I guess I'm... Man, I don't know what's wrong with me. But, you know, I wrote down that it was Morgan. The old guy who encourages Isidro. When Isidro's having, like, all those doubts and stuff about himself. And so we're just going to go with that. But everybody else, I do know who they are. It was just really hard. With some of the pictures, it was like, okay, I had to figure out what they were going for. And then... you know, I don't know every single character like that, so, you know, I had to figure it out, and I can't figure out that one guy. But moving forward, alright, we're going to start the tier list off with Grunbeld. Now, as far as I'm aware, I saw recently that there was... I didn't even know this. Grunbeld has his own spin-off, like his own backstory as to how he becomes an apostle and how all of that works out. Grunbeld is the apostle who turns into a giant crystal dragon when they come up on Flora's like little hut outside that village, you know, and Guts gets the Berserker armor, and it's the first time, and Guts puts it on, and he fights Grunbeld, and he, like, totally owns him with the Berserker armor, despite Grunbeld being so much stronger than a regular human, and actually whooping Guts' ass at the beginning of that fight. So, in my opinion, y'all, I think Grunbeld's up there. He's got his own story. He's got a crazy transformation. He's super tall and strong and behemoth-like from the get-go. He's like one of Griffith's trusted, like, apostles. You know, one of the stronger, more important apostles, right? So, I think Grunbeld deserves, like, a solid A in terms of interesting. Because... there's backstory to Grunbeld. There's character development to Grunbeld. There's status. There's relevance. So I'd say Grunbeld's pretty damn interesting. All right. So moving on, we got I don't even know why I looked at my notes. Ganeshka. So we got Ganeshka. Okay. How do we? Guys. Okay, look. Ganeshka is super interesting, right? He is the Kushan leader, and he turns into such a strong apostle, right? Ganeshka's S, okay? And let me explain this, alright? Ganeshka's S, because not only is Ganeshka important and relevant throughout the majority of the story, okay? But at a certain point, I forget which arc, but at a certain point in the story, Ganeshka uses a Behelit, or tries to use a Behelit, after already being a very powerful apostle. This, in turn, creates tons of copies of Ganeshka, which leads Guts to ride Zod with the Dragon Slayer pointed out in front of him, going to kill him. You know, Ganeshka's like the villain who... like Griffith has to like almost work with Guts, or Griffith's like team has to work with Guts's squad to like take him down because they all need to take down Ganeshka. He kind of like brings all the factions together temporarily. Ganeshka's super powerful. He's one of the strongest people we see other than the Godhand members, and he's able to create multiple clones of himself by means of, you know, pure evil stuff. So it's crazy because Ganeshka, like, he turns into all these copies because he just tries to keep using Behalets and keeps trying to get power, and he tries to surpass the Godhand, which in turn causes Femto to have to, like, you know, do that crazy scene where he appears and he, like, puts his hand up like that. That's actually my screensaver on my PC, right? So, one of my favorite scenes. Ganeshka's obviously super interesting character, has a crazy backstory, has all these ups and downs throughout the story. I love Ganeshka, honestly. So, he's S tier. And, yeah. Okay, now we're on to Roderick, Sigma Male Roderick. I think Roderick is a B. And I think that that's super fair. Because, oh, sorry, my cat needed to get out, and I had to address those needs right there. So, okay, Roderick is the guy who owns the Navy ship, okay? And Roderick is the person in charge of getting Guts and crew to Elf Island with means of Roderick's ship. Roderick has really good sword using abilities. He's very strategic in naval battles. He is like he's like the king of the sea. He is marrying Farnese out of like, kind of like, it seems like at first use for her Farnese's last name, but then he also is like making attempts to like get with her and like actually have like some kind of relationship with her. So he just seems like an overall good guy. In terms of interestingness, obviously if you're really smart in battle, you're famous on the sea for what you do in the sea. You explore, you're explorative, you push boundaries, you try new things, and you take our most important characters, our beloved characters, to one of the most important destinations of their story. Well, I would say that that's pretty interesting, but it's not, like, crazy interesting. So, I think C or B is pretty accurate for Roderick. But because I like Roderick, personally, and I think he's much more interesting than a lot of other characters, we're putting him a little bit up there. Maybe, you know, maybe since I'm biased, a little more higher than he should be, quote-unquote. But I think B is pretty good for him. Okay? Once again, all off interestingness, not goodness. But I do think he's relatively interesting. Okay, now Farnese. Okay, you guys. Farnese is an A. Okay? And the thing about Farnese that makes her so interesting, to me, is she is like upset. Okay, so she comes from this rich family, this notorious family who has a super popular, well-known name, the Vandemans or something, Vandebogs or some shit, right? The Vandemians or something. She's got a, she's like an aristocrat. She comes from a high, noble, important family, and she's obsessed with killing people at the beginning, right? Like, when we first meet her, she's like, one of the leaders of the Holy Sea Knights, and we get into her backstory with Serpico, and we learn she's obsessed with, like, burning people, and she burns tons of people, burns them at the stake. And then, as we get familiar with her, she, like, leaves her old, super fascist, intense, religious, cult-like lifestyle to follow Guts and leave it all behind and search for something new and better and more genuine. And she goes from being one of the most closed-minded characters to one of the most open-minded characters when she meets Shirke. And Shirke helps her open that mind and become a mage, a wizard, just like Shirke is. And so I am hesitant. I really want to give her almost an S because I feel like she's so non-stagnant. She's such a dynamic character. But I'm not sure if she's deserving of that S title, because Berserk characters that are S interesting, you know what? How about this? We put Ganeshka back at A, because Ganeshka's main claim to fame for interestingness is the fact that he splits up into all those millions of people because he just keeps trying to push the apostle. But now that I'm thinking about it, Farnese really has lots of ups and downs and has so much interesting things about her. I feel like swapping them is actually the move here. Okay? Because I'm thinking about it more and more. Farnese is crazy interesting. There's no denying. And typically, you know, the S tier people in Berserk are interesting because of a lot of the fictional, the fantasy stuff. But Farnese does meet those requirements. She is a part of the fictional land and is originally so far from that. So I'm actually gonna I'm thinking about it more. Ganeshka deserves to be A, right there with Grunbeld. And Farnese is definitely a plane above them, you know. I think that's so super fair. Now, Rickert. Okay. Rickert is, you know, part of the OG Guts crew, okay? Rickert's always there with Guts. Right after the eclipse, Rickert and Erica are there at the blacksmith's house, Godo. And Rickert puts all those swords up for his fallen Band of the Hawk members. He's an OG member of the Band of the Hawk. He slaps Griffith. I am hesitant to put Rickert too far up there, though, because Rickert is involved with interesting scenes, but Rickert is only really super interesting because of who he's interacting with and what's going on around him. He himself is not necessarily the most interesting, but he is more interesting than like C, maybe D, E, and F tiers. So I think Rickert might be our first C tier, okay? Because Rickert is an interesting character and he has things about him that are intriguing. But up until this, you know what? He does build some crazy stuff. I'll put him at B. Because towards the end of the story that we have right now, you know, as far as the manga's been what it's released, he does start to build some interesting tools and some interesting weapons of war, like explosion devices, shit like that. I think Rickert is deserving to be a little bit up there, but I wouldn't put him past B in terms of interestingness. Okay, now I thought about a lot of this stuff, not obviously in crazy detail, but I thought about each character before making the video. And one of the things I did was when I was thinking about the God Hand, right? I was thinking about the God Hand is so interesting. How do we get away from that, right? However, we are so in the dark about them. It's hard to say how interesting they truly are when we only know so much about them, and their only interesting factor is their mysterious elements, okay? So, like, see, with Farnese, we have all this character development. We have all these, like, iconic, staple character moments for her. Then she changes, then she develops, then she grows. She keeps surprising us. She keeps intriguing the audience. She's a character that is exhibiting constant change and growth, okay? So, I actually think some of the lesser-known God Hand members are perfect in the C rank, okay? And the reason I'm going to put Conrad in there, and I'm also going to put, oh, what's the other guy's name? The Ubik. I'm going to put Ubik in there as well, okay? So, the reason I'm putting them in there is because, you know, when we get that flashback of the God Hand and how the God Hand had old school members, right? We see that Ubik and Conrad and Slan were not in there. I think Slan and Void we're going to get to them because I don't think they're just C tier like, I don't think we should categorize them as just C tier. I think we could take a better look at them. So we're going to wait on them, but it seems like Conrad and Ubik are just chosen God Hand members that are just generally evil, but are also totally replaceable. It doesn't seem like, as of now, they have a super important role in the story, and while the God Hand concept is fascinating endlessly, I don't know if these guys deserve to just be considered super interesting characters. We only know a little bit about them, and they kind of have insignificant roles, even when they're kind of supposed to have significant roles, if that makes sense. Like, the couple scenes that they could have moments to shine, they don't really do much. Like, Conrad throws up rats on the world, and Ubik does something else interacting with the world, I think. But, I mean, you know, even in the Eclipse, when we see the most of them, they're the ones who talk the least. They're the ones who seem to have the least power, the least control over everything, the least knowledge on it. I think C is fair, because given their priority in the story, they are important, they are mysterious, they have elements that are interesting, but overall they're not super interesting because we just don't get too many details about it and they seem interchangeable, right? Okay, so Moonlight Child, I think this is an obvious S. Maybe I'm rushing. Okay, Moonlight Child, super interesting, because the Moonlight Child, the community is theorized that it's like Guts and Casca's child. I don't know if that's confirmed. It probably is, like, through subtext or something, but the Moonlight Child's super interesting to me because the Moonlight Child turns into Griffith, has good intentions, though, despite being a part of the most evil person, Griffith, Femto. And the Moonlight Child has mysterious powers that seem to be endlessly strong compared to even the God Hand members. It's like the Moonlight Child could fuck with the God Hand. So, the Moonlight Boy is crazy powerful, such a mysterious element of the story. It's clearly going to be a main part of the end. I think the Moonlight Child's just very interesting overall, super interesting, definitely S tier in that category. Now, then we have Rosin. That's right. Okay. Rosin is from the Lost Ark Child, the Lost Child arc, and Rosin is like the elf that Guts sort of has to fight with in that arc, that's only in the manga. She's the person that is, like, Rosin is her real name. She has another name. It starts with a P. I can't remember it. And they sort of have to fight her evil will because she becomes this evil, demented, like, dragonfly child who, like, uses quote-unquote fake, or elves, really they're fake elves, to, like, they appear nice and innocent, and then when you get closer, they like to kill each other for fun, and she's in charge of this evil group, and she's an apostle herself. So she is interesting. She has a lot of cool shit about her. She's pivotal to our main boy, Guts, growing as a character. But also, she's not that powerful. She's not that even mysterious. We kind of get what we get with her. And it's interesting for the time being. And it is an important arc. But overall, I think she's a C as well. Okay? Like, I think she belongs next to Conrad and Ubik. I think that's fair. Yeah. Now, Slan. Okay, Slan is super interesting to me. Because Slan, she seems... I'm going to put her in the A. Okay? And the reason I'm going to put Slan in the A is because Slan has some more dark and fucked up qualities about her, more so than Conrad and Ubik seem to have. She also seems like she seems like the only God Hand member that is, like, obsessed with evil and darkness the way that she is. Because if you remember the R-word scene with Femto, Guts, and Casca, Slan points out, which it rings in my head. Every time I think of the Eclipse, I think of her saying this. She's like, oh my gosh, we have passion, love, vengeance, anger, hatred, peace, kindness, all wrapped up. We have every emotion that you could possibly have all wrapped up in this one moment. And she's, like, sexually getting off to that. Okay? That's crazy. That's really dark. That's messed up. But it is super interesting. Okay? So Slan, she's up there on the interesting list. Right? Then we have a scene where she, like, kind of fights Guts. and like leaves him with that astral wound in that cave with all the trolls when I think Farnese and Shirke, or just maybe Farnese and Farnese and somebody gets captured. Casca. They get captured and they get sent to that troll cave, and then Guts like interacts with Slan there, and Slan's like, she's also seen at that scene where in the Conviction arc, all the evil worshippers are like summoning her through fire, and that dude with the goat head is there, and she's like involved with all the sex and the naked stuff that's happening. She's like the goddess of temptation or something, right? So she's super interesting because it seems like she plays a major role in the story. She's just generally so obsessed with darkness and evil doing that you can't escape her, okay? So to me, I think she's fascinating. I think she is a fascinating character by all standards of fascination. She's super interesting. Every scene she's in is dynamic. Everything she does is like, wow, how can you be that crazy of a human being? Like, she's like a lunatic psycho person. And those people are always so interesting. Look at how many people love the Joker. You know, that's like, I think of her as like Harley Quinn almost. So, super interesting character. Not S tier, I don't think, but definitely up there. Skull Knight. Alright, guys, Skull Knight's an S. Same with Void. I don't know how we get around that, really. Skull Knight, obviously, was the King Geiseric, and so what we know is that Skull Knight, who was King Geiseric, he was this great, amazing king who basically took over the freaking world. He was so powerful that angels, quote-unquote angels, had to be, like, created to come stop him, okay? And then, like, the lightning storm came and, like, took his kingdom out, and then the first eclipse ever happened. I think we saw a glimpse of that, is what I think the theory is that was the first eclipse. And Void, hand in hand, of course, was right there. So Void seems to be somehow in charge of the God Hand. He seems to like lead them. He's always been there from the beginning of time, despite any changes that were made. He seems like the most powerful God Hand member, the most knowledgeable God Hand member. So I think Void is S tier with Skull Knight because they have this humongous past and rivalry together. Also, Void was tortured so bad that that's like apparently how he looked before he became God Hand member, which is just crazy interesting. And then Skull Knight's the one who tortured him and sent him to the Tower of Rebirth, or whatever the tower was. Tower of Conviction, Tower of Rebirth, I think it's called. So, Skull Knight and Void have endless mystery around them. They're such fascinating creatures. Every time either one of them is in a scene, it's going down. And crazy stuff. The story's being advanced so much just by having them in any scene. They explain so much. They're in charge of so much. They are involved with so much. S tiers. Easy. Okay, next we have Jill. Jill. That's right. Jill is... I'm going to put her as an E. The interesting thing about Jill, if you don't remember Jill, she's the chick who Guts meets when the Lost Child arc is happening. She's the one who leads them to Rosin, okay? So, Jill has a abusive dad, and an abusive dad with sexually abusive friends, and they're all from the war, and her dad abuses her mom. Jill is sort of just like this victim character, but the reason I don't put her as F tier and I put her as E instead is that she is able to recognize how crazy important and Guts is in their short time of interacting, and she also has like an interesting way of like dealing with her abusers and stuff. She's smart. She's not just an idiot. She's smart for a little child. She's able to block the door from her dad's war buddy advancing on her. He tries to get in there in one scene and can't because she's like all over it. She's smart. She seems tactical. She seems like a good person despite going through this, like having this terrible household. And so I think her family dynamic and how she like weaves herself through that is slightly interesting. So not F. Then we have Flora. Okay, guys. So, Flora, B or A, one of the two. I think I'm going to say A. I don't want to say S because I feel like while Flora might have more relevance later on in the story, past 367, so she might come back and be important, whatever. I think we pretty much saw the extent of her importance for the most part. She is very interesting because she has a past history with Skull Knight, who is obviously S tier interesting. She has all these magical powers. She was banned, and has the ability to be bad or good, but chose good. She was banned from the village because of the Conviction arc and their like hatred of magic and spiritual astral world relativity. So she gets banned, but she's still good. She's got interesting stuff about her. She directs Shirke, who we love. So she's interesting. She's got a lot to say. She's an important character. And once we meet her, a bunch of interesting shit around her happens. So I think she's deserving a B, A tier. Probably more A is what I'm leaning. She's super cool. Okay, Luca. Luca's the prostitute from the Conviction arc. Luca, to me, is a B or C. But, you know, if I'm going to put Roderick B, I'm going to put Rickard B. Luca's B, I think. Because Luca has some cool shit about her. She's a prostitute, but she's super kind-hearted. She's not like how you would just maybe assume a prostitute would be. She is sleeping with men to survive, not out of just pleasure, I guess. Maybe people would... I feel like people in society would assume if you're a prostitute... it's because you're somehow lazy or because you want some pleasure that's a level of pleasure that shouldn't be obtainable or something like that. But I don't know. I don't necessarily think that way myself. I'm just trying to go off generalizations in society. Luca exceeds those generalizations. She is a really good person. She sleeps with men to take care of the children and the people in her life who are important. She's got that one blonde-headed curly chick with her all the time who keeps messing up and she keeps forgiving her. Luca is, like, seriously a good person, and, I feel like she rises above social standards and norms, which is interesting, okay? She might not be, you know, Rickard level of interesting slapping Griffith in the face, but once again, I explained. I feel like Rickard's super interesting because of who he interacts with, who he's around, and what's happening around him. I don't know if he himself is just this ultimate dynamic character. So... Rickard, I feel like, is well-placed. Luca should be right beside him, because while Luca's not always in the mix of the most interesting characters and things, she does have parts where she's around interesting people, and she's always doing something of, like, a forgiving nature. She always has, like, a loving nature, and she's always striving for better, and she's always trying to take care of the people around her. I find that to be an interesting character. Okay? I think that's a fair assessment. So, then we have Shirke. Okay, I think Shirke is an S. Okay? Shirke is an S because there's going to be a lot of S's. Okay, spoiler alert. I love this show. I love this anime, this manga, so there's just going to be S's. Okay, I think a lot of the characters are interesting. Hence why I love the show and the manga. But Shirke has all these crazy powers. She's able to get in touch with gods of wind, gods of water. She's able to take control, take the reins on big fat power scales. She's able, she questions Guts, but she like admires him. She questions everything around her. She's inquisitive. She is strong. She's powerful. She's mysterious. Shirke is by far one of the more interesting characters in my opinion. There's so much going on about her, and every scene she's in is so interesting and entertaining. And she's even strong enough as a young child to train Farnese. Super, super interesting. Okay? Gambino. Okay, guys. Gambino's an A for me. Gambino was nice. Okay, I could do a whole thing on Gambino, and I'm going to try and speed some of this up because I don't want it to be here for hours, but this is going to be obviously a longer format video because I'm giving little paragraph summaries about each and every character. I think there was like 43 characters in total. We've done like, what, 13, 15? Anyways, Gambino quick summary. He finds Guts, he finds baby Guts expelled from his hanging mother's womb, right? Gambino loses his wife to the Black Plague, blames Guts, harbors a hatred for Guts, but trains him still. Gambino's super interesting, guys. I think he's a piece of shit. He's a terrible guy. But by golly, is he not interesting? Because he saves a child. He didn't have to, okay? He trains the child. He didn't have to. It's interesting how he blames Guts and all that unfolds. And then he ultimately tries to kill Guts because he hates the way his life turned out and the way he got wounded and he became useless. And then Guts is so viable and useful to the same group of people. And so he tries to kill Guts out of hatred, misplacing the tragedies of his life and what happened to his wife on Guts. Super interesting stuff. Just gonna leave it there today. Puck. Puck is interesting, but only to a degree. I think Puck is an important character. I think Puck is awesome. I think Puck is well drawn. I think a lot of good things about Puck. Puck is so important for developing Guts. Puck is the first person after the eclipse to help Guts decrease that humongous amount of hatred that Guts has, and Puck is one of the driving forces behind Guts coming back to a balanced reality about seeing the world in a good and light way, not all bad. Okay? So Puck is crucial, and Puck is amazing. However, Puck himself, like, the most interesting thing about Puck is, like, he's like a small fairy, and he has, like, maybe some powers that are kind of cool, and maybe we don't know all his powers, but like, as far as the story goes, like, the most interesting thing about Puck is that he's like, yeah, I have a homeland where Queen Danon, my master in Elf Island, is super powerful, and the place I'm from is super chill, and it's where all the good, powerful people reside. That's, like, the most interesting thing about Puck, in my opinion. So, Puck is interesting, has some interesting things around him. Maybe Puck should honestly be the first D tier, but because Puck's so relevant and important, let's leave him at C. Okay. So, then we have Pippin. Alright. Guys, look. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe E or F. I'm always afraid to give an F. But now Pippin's at least an E. Not bottom tier. Okay, look. Pippin is just one of Guts' buddies in the Band of the Hawk before the eclipse. There's nothing too crazy interesting about Pippin. However, there's some interesting stuff. Pippin's really big and strong compared to most other human beings. That's interesting. Pippin also is one of the prominent friends that Guts tries to find during the eclipse. That's kind of interesting about him. Pippin also is so strong and fearless that he's able to pick Guts up and force him to attend, like, festivities. That's interesting. Like, Pippin's such a loving, big-hearted guy. He's like, Shaq or something. He's, like, huge but has a big heart, I guess. Some of that's interesting. Okay, so I don't want to just throw him in the F tier. Corkus. Okay, this is going to be hot. Corkus is an A for me. Easy A. Love that movie. But easy A. I don't want to say S, but I really find Corkus to be very interesting. Okay? Corkus is a necessary evil. I don't know if he's even evil. You could probably make a case he is. But he's always giving pushback to Guts. Developing Guts' character, helping us understand Guts' character, helping us understand Griffith's character, helping us understand the Band of the Hawk better and why they stan Griffith so hard, why every member of the Band of the Hawk is so infatuated with Griffith. Corkus highlights a lot of important aspects of a lot of important characters. He also puts up resistance where no one else does. This in turn makes me think Corkus is interesting. Because I think he is. Also, he loves tits so much, he's such like a sex addict, that Slan is able to deceive him during the eclipse and Corkus believes like there's a hot woman there when it's really just like Slan disguised as like an evil demon or something. Or it's an apostle disguised as a hot chick. That's funny. That's interesting. Okay? So, Corkus is up there for me. And don't come after my boy freaking Corkus. Okay. Lord Ganon. Okay, Ganon is... He's a child molester, so that's not really that interesting. He's just crazy and fucked up and evil. However, Lord Ganon's also very rich, and he's very status driven, and he has a humongous role in aiding the Band of the Hawk, which I found interesting. I found Griffith's relationship to him interesting. I found the whole thing about how Ganon didn't want to kill Griffith when the Band of the Hawk, and his forces collided. Ganon, however you say his name, he didn't want to kill Griffith. He wanted to secure him if they won. Then they lost, and he tried to profess his love for Griffith. Griffith, in turn, killing him. I thought he was involved with interesting things. And some of his status and money... and some of his, how fucked up his perversions are, it's all kind of interesting. I mean, it's way more fucked up and, just sad than interesting, but I think he's our first D tier. Okay, Griffith, obviously S tier. Griffith is like a narcissist. He's a leader. He's an interesting human being. He has layered, nuanced thoughts. He's intellectual. He's a lover. He's a best friend. He's a hater. He turns into a godlike demon. He trades his friendship and his community and his family for power. Super interesting. The most interesting, debatably, character in the story. If there was an SS tier, I would definitely give it to Griffith. Okay? He is the most interesting character. In my opinion, Griffith is the most interesting character ever. In all of literature, in media, in history. I find Griffith to be that interesting. I don't like to think Griffith did nothing wrong. I definitely think Griffith's evil, okay? He's crazy. He's a psychopath. But psychopaths are interesting. If you've seen American Psycho with Christian Bale, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Christian Bale's character is fascinating. Griffith is too. In the same type of way. Casca, we're going to put her as an A. And the reason we're doing Casca as an A and not an S... Okay. I should have thought about this one more. I'm kind of torn between A and S. Here's the thing with Casca. She's interesting. She starts off super hateful. She's obsessed with Griffith. She's a one-track mind character. But she flourishes. She grows. She learns. She overcomes trials and tribulations. She partners with Guts, who she hates, and learns to love him, eventually loving him more than anyone. She is so traumatized by the eclipse, she reverts back to a child. Super interesting stuff. I think the reason I'm hesitant on the S is because, guys, let's face it, Casca had a lot of growth. She's a dynamic character. She's an explosive, fiery warhorse. She's amazing. She's interesting. She's a powerful female character, a powerful female role model. She's super interesting. However, she is practically a vegetable for a large amount of the story. I feel bad for her. I hate that for her and her character. I wish that there was something more about all of it. But she's getting dragged by a rope as a helpless person for a lot of the story. That is an interesting aspect of the story, and the psychological aspects of that are super intriguing. But only to a degree, and it gets kind of fleshed out, right? Like, there was such a long time, also, that they were on the boat before they reached Elf Island, in the terms of, coming out with the new chapters. Because of Miora's health, R.I.P. as well. Love Miora. No, not trying to say anything. I'm just saying, we saw Casca for so long in such a bad state of mind, as such a useless, almost, character. Pretty much useless character. I don't think she deserves the S tier on interesting. Because there's so many more interesting characters, and she's involved with everything pretty much that is interesting, But she herself, again, is like always the victim and the damsel in distress character, and you can only go so far in terms of interestingness with that, although she does have that hardcore development in the Golden Age arc. She's probably the most interesting character up until the Eclipse in the Golden Age arc. More so than Guts, probably. More so than Griffith, probably. I mean, you know, it's up for debate, but she's one of the most dynamic characters in the Golden Age arc. For sure, like top 3, easy. And so I think A is perfect for her. I think it's perfect for her. Now, Charlotte, okay, guys. Charlotte's a solid D, right? I don't know how we, you know... Charlotte is involved with Griffith. She's involved with some super cool stuff. She wants to help the Kingdom of Midland. She's able to... she's like a scared little girl when she goes to the Tower of Conviction to help save Griffith. She puts her neck on the line. But at the end of the day, Charlotte's just pretty much a prominent character because of her family and her position. Griffith just is using her to gain nobility status. And she's only involved with so many scenes, and she only shows a little bit of growth, and she only changes. She doesn't really even change, right? She just pretty much is obsessed with Griffith endlessly from the beginning of the story that we were introduced to her. And so she's involved with interesting stuff, but she herself is like, I would maybe even say E tier. But because she's such a prominent character, I'm afraid to put her there with non-prominent characters. So, I think D is fair. Okay? Alright, now, Daisha, or what's this guy's name? I wrote it down somewhere. Diva. However you say it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm butchering the names. Please, like, just roast me in the comments below. Call me a freaking idiot. I'm sorry. Okay, Diva. I think Diva is interesting. Alright? I think he's kind of up there. I don't want to put him in A tier because he might be A tier by the end of the story. Totally possible. But right now, what we've seen, you know what? Maybe he is A tier. Because I would argue he's more interesting than, like, Rickard. I don't know. I feel like he might belong here, actually. Okay. Diva was one of the main Kushan guys right beside Ganeshka, okay? He was helping Ganeshka with... He was the wizard, or the mage, or the elderly yoga master who was, like, summoning all these evil creatures. Like the elephant tusk-looking guys who can, like, take out 10... It says in the manga they can take out 10 warships per creature he summons. And then Guts, like, cuts them down with the Dragon Slayer, and then Diva, like, challenges Guts and, like, pretty much loses despite, like, summoning instant tornadoes. And then I think you find out he wasn't summoning those tornadoes. But the point is that Diva's an interesting character because he's so strong. He has the ability to hold his breath underwater for, like, half an hour. He can pretty much fly. He's got all these crazy powers. But then, after Ganeshka kind of falls off, he starts to see Ganeshka's true evil nature. And, you know what? Diva's an A. He's an A. And here's why. He would just be B if he was just the Kushan leader, magical lead sorcerer dude. But he changes as a character. He changes allegiances, is what I'm trying to say. So, he sees how evil Ganeshka is, and he's like, wait a second. I didn't realize I was signing up to support this evil demonic presence. And then in the Millennium Falcon arc, or whatever the fucking arc name is, Millennium Falcon. Whatever the arc is called. He helps the Luca and her group of prostitutes. He gives them some diamonds because they help him. And Rickard, like, creates a, like a cast for him. And it seems like they're, like, going to join forces. So, actually, I think he's a dynamic character. And I think he's up there. Yeah, I think he is up there. He's more dynamic than Rickard or Luca or Roderick, and yeah, I think he belongs in the A tier, maybe like A minus, but he's in the A tier, probably at the end of the A tier, like the low end of the A tier. Okay, so then we have Sayat. I wrote his name down too, but I can't remember. Sayat, I think. Okay, Sayat, he's interesting, right? He's up there, but I don't know how up there. Okay, listen. He's the leader of this small band of people, okay? And the people are these strong, like, bald-looking mofos. And he has all these interesting weapon choices, and he's super strong compared to most other people. But he pretty much is just like a character to almost, like, enhance other characters, I feel like, at this point. Like, it seems like him and Rickard are also teaming up, and so maybe Sayat and Divey and Rickard will all, like, create this interesting group of people, and we'll see some more powers from this guy. But we've pretty much just seen this guy throw out some blades, have a couple cool techniques, and, you know, he's questioned his own allegiances, and he's starting to shift sides as well. Which, you know, I want to put him in the A tier, but I don't want to be so gracious on the A tier. I want to be strict here, okay? I want these people to be given what they're supposed to get, according to how well they're written. And I feel like this character is only written so well that we can... I don't know if he's A tier interesting, okay? He's interesting, but every time I was reading about him, I would just kind of be like, all right, let's get through this and maybe get into some more interesting stuff. That's how I kind of thought about it. So I'm going to leave him at B tier, but this is probably one of the less popular things I'm doing. You know, whatever. Okay, then we have the Egg of the King. The Egg of the King, I think, is also B tier. The Egg of the King is super interesting for, like, you know, 2 chapters. Like, we learn about the Egg of the King and how he's pretty much this, like, outcasted person who's like a giant walking apostle egg. His entire purpose in the world was to just help Griffith be reborn as a human being. And he's like this weird apostle thing that is like... I can't remember the intensive details about his backstory, but I just remember that he is like... He's pivotal for the story for, like, one purpose, and that's to sort of, like, help Griffith out and be this sacrificial pawn for the, like, for the eclipse that they're, like, artificially creating. So he's, like, the sacrifice for the artificial eclipse. And other than that, he's not... I mean, that's interesting, and it's interesting that he was an outcast of the world and that he got, like, banished to this cave where he, like, lived and, like, developed into this creature. It is interesting, but it only goes so far, and the interestingness, you know, it's short-lived. So, I think B tier is perfect because, if we're gonna put Sayat, the Kushan guy, with the interesting weapons in B tier, I feel like Egg of the King is, like, same category, right? Maybe even C tier, right? Isidro, okay, Isidro, I'm gonna put him as B as well. Okay, so Isidro is, you know what, let's put him at C. Let's put Isidro at C. Look, Isidro is a young boy who looks up to Guts because Guts is so powerful. Isidro wants power, but the things that are interesting about Isidro is he's crafty, right? He's agile, he's cunning, he's witty. And he's able to use his agility, his wits, his quick cunningness to outsmart dumb crooks and thieves and bandits and, you know, overpower them in that way. Outside of being, you know, smarter maybe than the average, outside of recognizing how powerful Guts truly is and giving proper props to Guts, and sort of outside of maybe being like a comic relief guy, I don't think he's all that interesting. I mean, I like Isidro. I like his character overall. He provides comic relief that's necessary. I think his dagger, his explosive dagger, is super cool that Flora gives him, right? And I think he's cool. He's kind of like a rebirth judo when he throws things. I love that. But his character's not fucking amazing, okay? Let's be honest. It's not like the best character. People don't cry over Isidro. If he died, I don't even know how upset the community would necessarily be. I just don't think there's a huge following around him. I'm gonna put him a little lower. Now, right here we have Foss, right? So, okay, look. Foss is up there for me. He plots to kill Griffith twice. Foss is what you would think of when you think of greedy nobles willing to do anything to obtain status, money, and power. That's such a common human trope, such a common human downfall, but for some reason, to me, it's always fascinating. I love this type of shit in Game of Thrones. I loved it in Berserk. This is one of the reasons I love both stories. Both stories have a whole bunch of aristocratic, evil, manipulative nobility plotting to kill each other for no other reason other than status and money. And that's so psychopathic, but it is so crazy interesting. And he even, despite being so one-sided, once Griffith gets the upper hand, he changes all the way to the other side to save his daughter and lets the queen and all his constituents burn alive in that castle. And he's terrified of Griffith. And his character shows us, his character's the first real indication that we should be afraid of Griffith, not looking up to Griffith in awe. And I find that whole arc, that whole process, that whole storytelling part so fascinating. And I think he's so short-lived, and you can boil down his character to such a simplistic little greedy manipulator. It's true. That is a simplistic and accurate thing about Foss, a description. However, that simple description is nuanced. There's an iceberg to it. So, I like him a lot. Okay, I do. Okay, now we have, blue-haired chick. Crap, what was her name? Oh crap, Jill? No. Oh crap, I wrote it down. I can't remember her name. Okay, we'll come back. Judo, baby. Judo, S tier. Come at me on this one, okay? Judo is fire. He is one of my favorite characters in this show, okay? He is so dang fire. I love Judo! Like, so much! Okay. Judo is endlessly fascinating, okay? Endlessly fascinating, alright? Judo, he loves Casca the whole time. And we don't, as the viewer, we don't even have an inkling of that until a certain point, until it's almost ending. Until the Golden Age arc is almost ending. We don't even know Judo has those feelings for Casca because he's just simply wanting Casca to be happy, and he's pushing guts on her. He's pushing her away from him, all for her sake. So selfless. Then Judo is constantly caught up in some of the most interesting monologues in the Golden Age arc. He explains to Guts, Casca's the reason you were saved when you initially met Griffith and lost that duel. She's the one. Griffith ordered her to lay beside you naked to keep you warm. And he thinks that it's a woman's duty to do that stuff. And, he psychologically analyzes people so accurately, right? He talks about, he's the person who introduces us to the fascination of Griffith. He's like, we all look up to Griffith. Griffith has this aura about him that we can't help but be fascinated by and follow, Judo also is so interesting with his throwing knives, and he's so unique in his combat style. He's really smart, but Judo is also so self-aware. And he talks about how he's never been great at anything, he's always been good at many things. Or maybe the quote is, he's never been the best at anything, but he's been great at many things. And he recognizes that, so he plays his role. He plays his part that he thinks he should play, because he isn't made for greatness in his eyes. He thinks he is made for just playing a role for greatness, because he's good at many things. So, and he's one of Guts' closest allies. He's so honest, he's open, he's selfless, he's intuitive, he's self-aware. Judo is endlessly fascinating. And it really isn't even till he dies that we find out he loved Casca. That's the only point in the story where it's definitely confirmed. And he uses his last bit of strength to save her. So interesting, guys. So freaking fascinating. Alright? And if y'all disagree with me, that's fine. But I think he's so interesting. Okay. So, okay, let's just hit some of the highlights here. Guts. Guts is obviously S tier. I mean, that's not... How are we going to debate this, right? He's so damn intriguing. You know, he may or may not be as intriguing as Griffith to people. I think he's just on the same level. I think they're on the same level. Griffith, to me, is a little more interesting, but Guts is so close, it's not even funny. And to some people, he's more interesting, right? And I could see that argument. It's so valid. It's such a valid argument. Guts, he's so hateful. And it all makes sense. He starts off getting R-worded by people he loves. He gets sold by Gambino to Donovan, right? He has to kill his only father figure in his entire life. He's so headstrong. He's so determined. He's so passionate. He's so consistent. He's so consistently him. Guts is based. Guts is based, bro. That's such a good way to describe him. But Guts, he's so based. He's such a based king with lots of riz, right? No, Gen Z talking. So Guts starts off as a hateful dude. He's a mercenary. He chops off Bezuso's head. He meets Griffith. He slowly is integrated into people, right? He starts to learn about people. He starts to learn how to interact with people, how to even have friends, what it means to have friends. Then he learns from Griffith that he needs to have his own dreams, his own goals, and not just be a part of something. He needs to be a part of something and lead something. He wants that for himself. He is deeply self-aware and simultaneously insecure. And he has lots of guilt that we see in the Lost Child arc and tons of other points of the story that he grows through and from, and he's constantly evolving. You know, every arc, Guts is basically a new person. So, in the Golden Age arc, he leaves that bitterness behind from his past, and he learns to be a happy person. Then he's a terrible person and a miserable person. And then he starts to slowly learn through friendship again and new ways how to make new friends. That's the whole thing he has to learn. Then once he makes his new friends, he learns how to drop the new hatred he's developed behind again. And he goes through so much and he perseveres through so much. He is determination in a character. He is struggle embodied. He is metaphorically what everybody thinks of when they think of pushing forward, okay? So I love Guts and I find his fascination to be endless, okay? I don't know how this is even, you know, debatable on some of these, like Griffith, Guts, Void, you know, Skull Knight. It's like these are such obvious S tier bangers. But whatever. Now, let's do the Queen of Midland. So the Queen of Midland, she's like, I think she's our first F, okay? The Queen of Midland is not interesting. She is just some chick who is super hateful and bitter of a peasant-born person like Griffith rising in the ranks. I think that dynamic is interesting, like with Foss. However, with the Queen of Midland, we don't even necessarily see all the stuff we do with Foss. Like, Foss is a side swapper. He's a side changer. He plots in detail to kill. The Queen just... We see her generally a part of the plot to kills, but I don't even think we know if she initiates it or not. And she honestly just seems like more of a follower in the category of hating Griffith on his rise. So maybe the Queen is E because she's a part of this dynamic I do like a lot, but I don't want to... I think she is our F tier, our first F tier, because there's not a lot to her. We don't see her much. And the most interesting about her is the fact that she's burned alive by Griffith. I think that that's a Griffith thing, not a her thing. So, I mean, maybe her psychotic levels are a little interesting, how psychotic she is, but we don't really get details on that. So I'm going to leave her F, and I'm going to just leave her there. Okay. Now, this guy, the guy we couldn't find, who I think is Morgan, I think Morgan, if this is Morgan, Morgan's just sort of an encourager and like he's like almost like a, when I think of stories, I think of characters being like, if you think about a pinball machine, right? You flip the pinball, it bounces off things. Well, some of those things it bounces off, they don't even have points. It's just a wall to get you to the next thing, whether that's being hit again by the flickers or hitting a thing that has points. I think of Morgan as like that. He's just a character that's there to sort of make another character seem and feel a little more interesting. So he's another F tier, okay? Serpico. Serpico is A at least. Serpico has this whole traumatic past about being bullied, about being poor, about being no one. Then Farnese helps him, saves him. He dedicates his life to her. He's super consistent in his love for one person. He is seemingly a good guy overall, despite, you know, he does try to kill Guts, but it's for good reason. It's understandable somewhat. He doesn't hold this stuff against Farnese, despite the fact that Farnese burns his own mother alive. He's still dedicated to Farnese. He is loyal to a T, and he is super strong. I would say to a surprising amount. He has a surprising amount of strength. He is very well trained. He's a gifted swordsman, and we don't know where that comes from. There's some mysterious elements there. He is super interesting, and I think he definitely deserves to be up there. Maybe B tier, but I'm just gonna say A tier because he's involved with so many people. Zod is S tier. Zod is, you know, it seems like Zod is one of the oldest living apostles. He's so obsessed with defeating strong people and killing in general that he just scours the earth for hundreds of years in a non-apostle form just so people are willing to engage in combat with him, and then he can kill them. And he's willing to lose a battle. Like, he almost wants to lose a battle. Like, when he fights Guts, and Guts, like, cuts him before he goes full demon mode on Guts, Zod is, like, sexually aroused almost, like Slan. Like, he's, like, so obsessed with that idea that Guts can even touch him. And then when they fight again on the Hill of Swords, he's like, I'm proud of you, boy. You survived the carnage, and you have this wonderful shape as a human. Let's duke it out again, baby. And Zod is, like, super fascinating to me. He sides with Griffith despite almost killing Griffith, and he knows to back off when he sees the Egg of the King. Zod, he's a brutal psychotic murderer with, I don't even know what kind of mental state. He's probably just been so insane for so long, he doesn't even know who he is. He's just a warrior seeking death. And you might think that's simple. That's fine. I think it's super interesting. I think it's psychologically fascinating. I think Zod is always there at the most interesting turning points of the story, and I think there's a reason for that. I think Zod, his character matters a lot. His character enhances the other characters. It pushes Griffith. It pushes Guts. It encompasses so many things: hatred, confusion, and how to live your life. He's so metaphorical, right? He's so dynamic. I don't think he changes a lot, but Zod doesn't have to change because his character is so fucking crazy and out there. He just has to be himself every time we see him, and he's interesting. So every time I see Zod, I'm super interested. I'm flipping the pages so dang fast. Okay? Now, the King of Midland. The King of Midland, first of all, he is, in the anime, he's a lot less interesting. I would put him in an E or an F in the anime. But in the manga, we see that he's in love with his own daughter. And he tries to R-word her. He probably has in the past. We don't know, I think. We don't really know that. But he's a psychopath out of his mind. That's somewhat interesting. And he's the one who sends Griffith to be tortured the way he tortures Griffith just because Griffith basically gets with his daughter. That's crazy. And that's super fucked up, and I don't want to give any sort of, like, praise to a guy like that, but it is at the very least interesting, and you know what? Let's just put him at E, because he's not as interesting as Charlotte or Genin. So I think E is perfect, because he's a little more interesting than the Queen, right? But He's just basically a psychopath who's, like, obsessed with his own kid, so, you know, not that fascinating. Okay, Uwu, or Owen, sorry, Uwu, holy shit. Okay, not Uwu, Owen, sorry. Jeez, that was a bad brain fart. F tier, guys. He's just some noble who's, like, in awe of Griffith's power and, like, kind of questions some stuff, and he's not interesting at all to me. I don't really get it. Wild is at least D tier, because Wild is the leader. He's an apostle, and if you're an apostle, you have some backstory. That's what that means, inherently. You are evil inherently, but could have not been, and he is the leader of a group of killers and rapists. So, you know, he's super evil, he's super fucked up, but he has all this weird power. He's an interesting character artistically, and I do think he has some interesting scenes. So, you know, he's one of the first apostles we see, and he has his relevance, so I'm going to put him in D, because I think he's, like, right there with, you know, the other two D guys, the other two D folks. Okay, so now we have, okay, wait, I don't want to do Mosgus yet. We did Wild. Okay, Sonia. I think Sonia is B, okay? And the reason I think Sonia is B is because Sonia understands things that we don't understand for sure. Like, she understands... Okay, Sonia's obviously going to be main character, big time ship, but we just haven't seen it yet, and we don't know her relevance. So I'm going off up to 367, what we know and have. She is a psychic medium. She helps Griffith significantly. She has all these psychological powers. She can read people's minds, right? That's pretty crazy. She helps Griffith she can sense life forces, and so she can pick out strategic routes on the battlefield on how to strike people, how to dodge stuff. She can use the world tree that connects the astral plane to the physical realm. She can use that tree, only her and Griffith, as she claims, without getting lost. So she's super psychologically enhanced, but it seems like outside of having these crazy like, medium-type powers, her character doesn't seem crazy interesting. However, it seems like she will be, and it seems like she'll have some relevance, and so I don't want to put her too low, but I don't want to put her too high, because we just don't know yet. What we've seen every time she's been around, it has been interesting and captivating. I don't think it's necessarily because of her. I think it's because she's around Griffith and other people that are interesting, but she definitely enhances our S-tier characters, and she definitely has interesting power and knowledge on her own. I think B is super fair for her. I feel like most people would probably say A, but I feel like B is more realistic because, again, after the recent chapters especially, she might have been lying about being one of the only people that can traverse the world tree. And if that's the case, I think that pegs her down in an interesting scale. She just has, like, some useful powers for Griffith, and so Griffith, like, keeps her close because of that. But if she didn't have those specific powers, I mean, she definitely wouldn't be relevant. And her powers are only so interesting. They are interesting, but they're only so interesting. They're not, like, mind-boggling like the God Hand's powers mind-boggling. So, I think B is super fair for her. Let's see. Then we have Rabon Raven. He's just a high-ranking, Midland official who sort of gawks at Griffith's power, and, Owen and him seem to be important in the sense of they're sort of like the humans that are telling other humans, nah, it's okay to side with Griffith. Even though Griffith is leading demons, these demons seem to be helping us, and they seem to have our best interests, so they're important to, like, the story. But I don't think they're dynamic characters. They barely have screen time. They're not super focused on characters. I'm putting them low, for sure. I don't know. I feel like that's fair. Okay. Now, Mosgus, I think Mosgus is an A. Father Mosgus is super fascinating. He's so obsessed with religion, and he has that whole group of people. He might be S tier as I keep talking about him. I think he's like a pseudo-apostle, the only one, maybe? Like, in his regular form, it's like he's so powerful and strong, right? And then he's like in charge of so much, and and he tortures people with that wheel. That part was crazy. It's interesting. It's fucked up. It's very evil. It's very wrong, but it's interesting. He breaks people's bones on a wheel using another wheel. Excuse me. He's also so psychotically religious. He throws himself down painfully to the point where he is like, has like problems with his knee joints and he's like fucking up his head, scarring his forehead, and he throws his body down. You know how he can like barely walk seemingly so intensely. That's how hard he throws himself down in worship of whatever god he worships. Then he kills people by hitting them over the head with like the Bible book he has, and he has that group of constituents, the little cronies with the masks on that Guts has to fight. They're all interesting, and Father Mosgus is interesting because he found them, and they had some like disease that they were allergic to the sun, so they were outcast. But he like took them and like gave them a place in the world. Then Father Mosgus has the entire torture chamber where people are just getting tortured day in, day out to come to the light and repent for their sins. And you know, he's like the psycho Christian fascist that's like so standard for I don't know, any sort of like religion story, right? Okay, I cannot find my notes on these last two people. I think this girl right here is the mermaid, and she's not that interesting from what we know. I can't remember her name. I really, for some reason, am blanking so bad. Yzma. Gosh. Okay. Yzma is they come up on this town, Guts and Casca in her reverted psychological form, and Shirke and Isidro, and they find the mermaid, and then like something happens, and like Isidro gets in a fight, and he like gets underwater, but then she's like half human, half mermaid, and then she like saves Isidro, and then they like meet her parents or something, and she's like freaked out because like her mom's like a mermaid, and then yeah, but she's so like innocent and she's like innocent and super nice and has like this weird aura about her. So I want to put her not F tier because she's not involved with that much interesting stuff, but she is kind of interesting still. Like, she has a weird powerful aura around her that they can't like, Shirke can't like put a finger on it, she says, and like there's like some mystery eluding her. So I want to like do her some justice. I think E is where she belongs. And then this person, this is the elf or the fairy that aids Shirke. You know, it's like Puck. It's like maybe Puck deserves D and maybe she's E. Because, okay, Puck is interesting, but Puck isn't that interesting. Puck is sort of like just helpful to Guts mainly, and that's sort of what's interesting about Puck. Other than that relationship, there's not a ton of stuff about Puck other than some comedic relief. Well, the female elf or fairy, the female version of Puck, I forget her name, but she's basically even less comedically involved and has no relation to Guts. I think she just has some relation to Shirke. So she's important, and I don't want to put her F tier because she has some relevance in the main storyline, but yeah, guys, this is pretty much my Berserk tier list of interesting characters, right? I feel like it's accurate, okay? I'm sorry I couldn't remember all the names, and I don't know if that's Morgan or not. It's hard to tell, but, you know, I worked with what I had. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Some of this long-form content is draining. You know, it takes a lot of effort. I gotta make a lot of notes, do some research, you know, I've read the entire manga twice, but it's been like 6 months since I did that. And I've just been keeping up with the chapters. I've only seen the whole anime, all the episodes that they have. I've seen the Golden Age arc twice and only 2011 episodes once, right? So I am versed in the story and the characters, but only to a degree. So once again, guys, please like and subscribe. I definitely am putting a level of effort into this, and if anybody can appreciate that, if anybody can respect that, and if you guys enjoy this type of content at all, I am more than happy to keep making it. I love Berserk. I don't know if I want to be just a Berserk channel yet, but I definitely am leaning in that way because all my Berserk content is so fun to make, and you guys seem to respond to it the most positively. So, once again, like, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for any support. Leave a comment below. Please argue with me. Discuss the stuff with me. Put some resistance up to my ideas. I want your comments. I live for your comments, okay? So, again, appreciate. Y'all have a blessed day. Thank you so much. Peace.